Hey camera, welcome back to Trucks on Power Block. Well, I hope you guys are liking Knuckle Buster Season 2. It was a very difficult build, and we had a lot of struggles, but it is a very cool car. We figured it out, well, for the most part. You'll see a whole lot of struggle throughout this season, and in the beginning, what you didn't really see is a lot of the planning process. And the first few steps were just trying to get the engine placement correct. Everything had to be really well thought out, and we couldn't just jump right in and start putting stuff together. There's a lot of work going on off camera that was in the first few episodes, and then it really starts to come together from now on. We had a plan, we hit a stride. It is very fun. It's a fun ride, and it's one of the coolest cars we've ever built. But I hope you guys are staying home, staying happy, staying healthy, keeping yourself occupied. I got my own home garage where I'll be working on stuff as my F14, my FJ for home renters, so keep watching that as well, and then tune into our live stream. Stuff's fun, but enjoy the show. Thanks, guys. So we pulled the motor off of this crane that PPE made. We're gonna make a template to start our motor mounts, and then tomorrow we'll be able to throw that in once we get the crane. All right, so today is our test fit day. We're gonna put the engine in the engine bay and see how everything fits and fab up some mounts. But before we gotta do that, we have to take off the fenders because this crane is supported on the outside here. If we put them on the fenders, they'll just get crushed. We don't want the motor to move at all. So we'll get that in a desired spot, and then we'll start fabricating mounts.
Is it loose over there already?
I pulled the thing out of it. All right, so right now we have a bit of an issue, which was to be expected. The PPE headers are quite a bit bigger than the factory ones, so we had to move the steering out of the way. So we just kind of decided to take the steering out, and we'll deal with that later. But we want to get the engine mounted first, so we've got a couple different battles here. Firewall kind of necks in, and that becomes a problem. So we might have to cut some of that out. We're gonna try and get it down another inch back, and we're just gonna play this wiggle game until we get it set to where we want. And then we'll have a good plan of where to cut the frame rails or how to notch it if we have to do that. Don't want to, but probably gonna have to. All right, so after quite a bit of mock-up, we got the engine sitting where we wanted it. It's actually in a really good spot. It does fit, but we modified quite a few things. I'll show you what we modified. All right, so the modifications we made, number one was the headers that we got from PPE were quite big. So we had to chop out the frame rail on top. We do plan on boxing that in later, but that gave us quite a bit of room. And even for the clearance here with the new dry sump oil pan, it looks really good. The other problem we had was the steering, and the steering is still a problem. That's going to be a little bit difficult to figure out, but it does give us an idea of how much room we have for the motor mounts themselves. But we are going to need to get urethane because the engine shakes so much. So we're going to order some of that and get back at that tomorrow, as well as some of the other trans stuff. So today we got motor mounts. It's just a little bit of fabrication. We have a lot of space. It's really not too bad to get in there. Once the motor mounts are done, then we'll move to the trans mount, and everything should be sitting in place by the end of the day, and we can move on from there. All right, so we've made basically every part we need to make the motor mounts. We've tacked a few things together, but we just need to tack the subframe to the engine stuff and we're done there. So we'll take it down, we'll weld it, and hopefully this sits under its own weight. If not, we gotta try again. It's in there. All right, so we finally got the motor sitting in place where we want it. The motor mounts are done, trans mount is done. We just need to take it back out, finish weld it, and when we do that, I'll pull it out and show you what we did, because we kind of just jammed through this. It was a little bit of a pain, but it's finally a diesel Camaro, and pretty excited with where we got today. Today we brought Scott back again. He's going to be returning maybe more than once after this.
A few times, I'm sure.
We have a lot to figure out, and that's what we're doing today. Brought Scott so he can help me plan this turbo setup we got going on, and a lot of all the routing, so intercooler, radiator. We're just going to think through a lot of things. So we got to assemble the engine as much as we can so we know how much space we have. Really, that's all we got to do is put it together and try and figure everything out. So what we're trying to do right now is relocate the alternator because the old bracket makes it sit here. It's bulky, it's ugly, it's in the way. Also, we're trying to find a place to fit the turbo. So we're thinking of putting the alternator down here, making a special bracket for it, and then setting the turbo somewhere real close above it, just to make the piping kind of an easy route for everything. Because the compound turbo setup is pretty complicated, and it needs to have a nice routing. It can't be very abrupt, otherwise it takes power.
And this will be nice here because then we can take the hot pipe, make a simple double 90 back to there, and then the exhaust will just go out the sides.
Right. All right, so we're gonna continue to mount this up, and hopefully we have a good plan within an hour or so. Glad to know that other people do this.
Here. This is mock-up 101, man.
What do we got?
There. Look at that shit.
Man, I hope that doesn't fall.
It won't.
Don't touch the car. Fire it up. So we had to relocate the alternator because the alternator sat here, which is kind of in the way planning the piping for this.
It was in the way of everything.
And it would have stuck out of the hood. So
it would have stuck out of the hood like 4 inches.
Yeah, and looked horrible. And we want to make these turbos look cool. But the alternator is relocated down to here. It's kind of hard to see, but that's where the alternator is, and we'll have something here to tension it. That's a pretty cool piece. It still needs to be welded up, but for the most part, that's done. With this turbo, we didn't have anything to mount off of, and this plate was made to the bottom, which is the sandwich plate.
So what we did here is this turbo doesn't have anywhere to mount it. So we've got to pull that burr off there still, but you get the idea. So we made a plate here that has two 5/16 holes on the outside, so you can build a mount off that.
Right.
And then this just sandwiches with 2 gaskets and goes on your regular drain flange.
Which is pretty slick for us mounting this. It's going to be good. Now, the next problem will be all the exhaust.
Right.
Having a really tight clearance. But we did a bunch of other stuff too. This was a block off, which will be done in the future.
Right.
Then you welded this up, like just a bunch of little things that we weren't even thinking about or even considering, and that's all done.
Yeah, but you don't want to start it up and have coolant spewing everywhere because you forgot to block something off.
Which is exactly what I would have done if you weren't here. Thanks for being here, man. I wish I could just keep you with me. I know you won't, but I'll get you back.
I'll be back to help you.
I know you will.
You know I will.
Now we have a really good plan, and we're going to put the turbo on, but in order to do that, we need to take everything off that we mocked up, weld it up, finalize it, so nothing moves, because the turbo has to be in a location that it can't hit anything and that the piping makes a lot of sense. So
we want to make sure that we get that all welded up, and we'll move on from there. Once the turbo's mounted, we're going to get right into piping. All right, so we fabbed up all of our engine mounts. We got them welded up. They turned out pretty good. And if you remember, we made another mount that's on the engine block with urethane bushings, so it's not going to rattle everything free. So we're going to bolt these up and then start fabricating the transmission mount, get that finalized, and then we're able to get back up in the engine bay and use this, which is what we made for the alternator relocation, and it's going to also hold the turbo. So pretty important piece, took a lot of thought, but when we're done with this, we get to move on to turbo stuff. Just throw some more tacks on it and we'll be good to roll. So we fabbed up this trans mount. It is ready to go back in. We made it pretty beefy, really strong to take all the torque. So we're gonna throw this thing back in there, mount it up, and then we're gonna move on to the turbo. I ain't going nowhere. Put the trans mount in, got everything exactly where it needed to be. Started working on the mount for the alternator bracket, and then we started mocking up the turbo. Got the turbo where we wanted it, and then made this pretty cool looking piece. I wanted to show you before I put it in, but this is going to be the arm that will hold the turbo, and this right here is where the alternator is. Pretty cool, pretty strong. So this will locate that and we can move on from there. So I'm gonna go ahead and put this on. It's pretty stout. So we finished the turbo mount slash alternator relocation, and I'm pretty pumped on it. It was a difficult piece to make. It took a lot of thought, but it's done. It looks good. It's very strong. And we can move on now, so we'll move on to intercooler piping, exhaust, stuff like that, which is one of my favorite parts of the build. So to catch you up to speed from when we saw you last, we've been kicking a lot of ass. We've got a lot of stuff done. It looks really good, it looks really clean. First thing we want to take a look at is what we were worried about with the turbo. So this is very tight clearance, and it stuck out maybe another inch or two. We had to cut all that back, plate that in so we can get the exhaust. It's actually kind of hard to see from here. So this exhaust pipe is going to have to run all the way to here, and that's a really tight bend, but that's why we notched all that out. And then same thing down here, you can see this notch for the header. That's also very tight, but we boxed it in too to make it very tough. And then from there, we kind of sealed up all the firewall. You can see these little holes here. This plate we made, we might actually use this plate for wiring, stuff like that. It's a little nice removable piece in case we have to use it. If not, we'll just bolt it up and seal it up. Moving on, we started getting into the intercooler stuff. So in order to do that, we had to put everything on the engine and pretty much have to assemble almost everything because we need to know exactly where everything can go. From there, we had to build up everything. I wanted the fuel lines, the new fuel pump from Dynamite Diesel. So we need to know where everything is. It's very, very tight in here. And this is gonna have to be crisscrossing paths, and we can't have any issues with this thing rocking back and forth, breaking piping. If we get out there and have an issue with the piping, then we're shut down. So it has to be right the first time, and that was where a lot of complications came in, which was getting into the piping and taking everything apart and accounting for the very little space that we have. So for now, these are just tacked up, but you can see there's a lot going on here. They need to be fully welded, but it was a good start. Not completely done, but getting there. So here's one of the challenging pieces. This was originally a piece from PPE, which they use for their own kit, but ours is quite a bit different because of the packaging in the Camaro and the turbos that we have. So I had to make quite a few different changes to this, even including a reducer, which we did not have. The piping has to be very thick because of all the boost we're gonna run. And then we added some Vibrant HD clamps. These things are awesome because they can accept a whole lot of boost and they're pretty cool. They can move in and out. It's fairly simple to mount to. But every step of the way, when I had to mount this, I had to take everything else apart for every single tack weld, every step. So it's been kind of a pain. Another thing was making this big intercooler. This is a Vibrant core, and we had to make the end tanks ourselves. So these were drawn up, cut out on the plasma, and then welded together, and then some special tabs that we made to mount it. So one of the first things we had to do was mount this and the radiator so we knew exactly where the destination was of the pipe. All right, so we're kind of on the finishing touches of the intercooler. These last little bends here, bit of a pain to put on there, but while I'm working on that, Jose's working on the radiator. I just have to put a few more of these clamps in so we can take everything apart. They have to be really well aligned, but they're pretty cool, these Vibrant HD clamps. It gives you a little bit of play in there as well, so you don't have to be exactly perfect. Everything does have to move. And then there's 2 O-rings that sit inside these. Those are held together, that'll hold a ton of boost, so pretty cool, real slick design, like it a lot. So one more, 2 more, 1 more, last one, then we're done with this. All right, so intercooler piping is basically done. We didn't really show you much on the front end of what we did here, which was creating a bash bar. This is basically a bumper support and the support for the intercooler. We had to make this so we could figure out the routing of everything. But once we got that in place, we did figure out all of the routing for the piping. We hole sawed the end of the end tank, put that pipe inside just a little bit. Everything was really well cleaned up and cleaned out before we tacked it on there. Then when any debris inside before we weld this up, we'll probably go through and clean it again. But I'm pretty pumped with the way it turned out. Everything looks really good. Should be pretty functional and out of the way of anything else, and frees up time for our next project. So move on to the next thing. Motor mounts are done. No, they're not. We still have to pull them out and weld them.